Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on our webinar this morning on the FAFSA Challenge, Promising Practices to Increase Financial Aid Access Among Foster Youth. Very excited to have us. We have a really great panel of people and some really great best practices that Burton Advocates for Youth has been able to curate to increase FAFSA completion and increase financial aid access throughout California. Before I get started here, and before we get started in our content, I wanted to just turn your attention to the control panel. And so in the control panel, as a participant, you're able to look in that handout section. And in the handout section, you will have a copy of the PowerPoint. You actually have a copy of the newly released publication that is corresponding to today's presentation. And you will also see a slide in there about the support letters that are needed for some new legislation that's going to be coming through. Okay, and I was just told that some people may not have been able to hear me, so I'm going to restart what I had just said. Today in the handout section in your control panel, you'll be able to download a copy of the presentation. You'll also have a copy of the publication that we had just published today, and FAFSA Challenge publication, and you will also be able to see a slide about just some legislation that we are sponsoring and how you can support with those legislation. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Today you're going to hear from myself. My name is Tia, and I'm here at John Burton Advocates for Youth. You'll also hear from Jessica, who's also at John Burton Advocates for Youth, who is based down in LA County. You're going to hear from three really awesome counties. You're going to hear from Jason at Tulare County, Stacey over at San Bernardino County, and then LaShawna Jenkins over at Los Angeles County Office of Education. So we have a really great, awesome plan today for you. Okay, and just to kind of go over what we are going to talk about today, we're going to discuss a little bit about what the actual FAFSA challenge is and what led up to the FAFSA challenge. We're going to discuss a tool that can be able to check the status of completed FAFSAs. The system is actually called Web Grants. We're going to present the best practices that are within that publication that's again in the handout section in your control panel. And these best practices were meant to and are meant to increase financial aid access of foster youth that are in your counties and in your schools. And finally, we're going to highlight three counties who previously won the FAFSA challenge and share the strategies that they are actually using in their counties. All right. So the first step to increasing money and going to college is going to be completing the FAFSA, or the free application for federal student aid. And as you can see here, this is especially critical for students that are coming from low-income backgrounds, as these students are 127 more likely to enroll in college once they complete a FAFSA. And that's huge for our students that are coming from these low-income backgrounds. So completing the FAFSA not only creates a pathway to enroll into college and getting into college, it also is making sure that there is more access, and if they have more financial aid, then they are more likely to graduate. And as you can see here, demonstrated in this little chart, is that youth and students that had $7,500 or more in financial aid, 49% of them transferred or graduated. That's huge. Okay, but conversely, those who had anywhere between $1,000 to $2,500 in financial aid, only about 17% of those are transferring or graduating, right? And so as we can see, financial aid is the difference between persisting through college and not. So now that we've covered financial aid as a whole, what about our foster youth? So based on recent data that has been pulled from the statewide dashboard, CalPAS Plus, foster youth are accessing the Promise Grant fee waiver at a rate of 78%. But as you can see, at 49%, they're accessing the Pell Grant, which is a little bit confusing and alarming, as the same criteria and income criteria to qualify for the for the California College Promise Fee Grant is the same income criteria as receiving a Pell Grant. And then again, you're seeing that even less are accessing that Cal Grant, right? And so what is the difference in these numbers? it's completing a FAFSA, right? We're seeing that these youth are not completing a FAFSA when they're in high school, when generally most of the general population of seniors are, and they're accessing these monies at a significantly lower rate and now missing out on thousands of dollars that they could have access to when they enter college. All right, so there are so many individuals that can actually support foster youth to complete the FAFSA, from independent living programs to CASAs, social workers, high school counselors. There's so many people at the table who can actually support with completing the FAFSA. What happens though is that there is an underlying assumption that someone else is going to do it. And I think that it's a well-intended thought, but what ends up actually happening is that many times, because people haven't talked to each other, or they haven't coordinated with each other, or a workshop has duplicated services, a youth have already done it, it leaves the youth really confused, and it leaves them lost, and then it actually turns into them just not completing the FAFSA at all and hopefully moving on to college, and they're entering into college without finishing that FAFSA. So now they're playing catch up, they're having their foster youth liaison at the college or the college support program that has to support to get the FAFSA done, when it really should have been done prior to entering the college and all of the steps done prior to them actually starting classes. So this actually began and then what launched and turned into the California Foster Youth FAFSA Challenge. Okay, the challenge was launched in November of 2017, and it's still running 3 years strong. Last year, 52 out of 58 counties were participating. And during the challenge, the Foster Youth Services Coordinating Program, or the FYSCPs, in the county offices of education, were the key coordinators who were working with stakeholders and partners within their county. So they were working with school districts, working with child welfare, working with local colleges and other stakeholders to make sure that there's actual coordination and conversations of who's going to support the youth to finish a FAFSA. Okay, and so they were the ones, FYSCPs were identifying the students and communicating with those stakeholders and verifying that FAFSAs were completed using that web grant system. So I want to acknowledge that the FAFSA challenge is working. It's very exciting. We are seeing a steady increase from 45% in 2017-2018 to 57% in 2018-2019. This is huge. This is not without the work and coordination of the FYSCPs. There is so much great work that's happening throughout the state, and I'm excited that you can hear from 3 of the 52 that have participated and are really, changing the conversation and changing the narrative of foster youth accessing financial aid. And I have no doubts in my mind that this percentage will continue to increase as we see more coordination and more awareness. And I also just want to acknowledge and recognize that these are the counties from the 2017-2018, from the first year and the second year's FAFSA challenge. We had separated them out into large counties, to medium counties, small counties, etc., based on the number of foster youth who were in their counties, the number of senior foster youth that were in their counties. And as you can see, it's represented throughout the state. We have large, we have small. I'm very excited that we'll have Los Angeles County actually on our call here towards the end, so they could talk about what their improvement strategies were. We have Tulare County that's going to talk about theirs, and then of course we have San Bernardino County that's going to talk about some strategies that they're using. So in addition to the counties having better coordination and communication around FAFSA completion, most counties throughout the state have access to what's known as web grants. And web grants is an online statewide database that is used by the California Student Aid Commission that's available for local educational agencies to look up student level data regarding FAFSA and California Dream Act completion. So they're able to look at a status and see, did a youth finish a FAFSA? Did they not? There's no more guessing. There's no more, well, a social worker told me and I think that they did it, and then we find out that it didn't actually happen. This is a definitive system that says, yes, a youth did a FAFSA. No, they did not. Okay? And so this also allows for you to see patterns that are happening maybe within the county school districts. Maybe it's happening within a certain school. Maybe you're seeing that there's a school that has no FAFSAs completed. And so this allows to have specific student interventions and to have targeted county / school district interventions and opportunities for training and conversation and better coordination. And so this all led to a wonderful publication that this webinar is about. And so the publication, FAFSA Challenge, Promising Practices to Increase Financial Aid Access Among Foster Youth. You can actually download this report now. That's within your handouts. And it's also available online. And you can see this link here. And within your handouts in your presentation, it's also a clickable link that you can click on that link and go directly to that FAFSA Challenge report. Okay, and again, in that publication, we have gathered a lot of best practices that are around data, that's around coordination, around institutionalization, and really spotlighting counties that have won and have some really great innovative practices that are happening within their county. So we're going to do a very broad overview of what those best practices are. Again, you can get more details from these recommendations that are located within that publication, within your handouts or online. All right. So first, we want to, since FAFSA is done during the student's senior year, the foster youth senior year, it's critical that we're accurately identifying who the 12th grade foster youth are at the start of the academic year in a given county. Right? So, and it's also critical that we recognize that foster youth are a highly mobile population, and it's likely that these youth are going to change schools. And so making sure that there's a mechanism that we're not only identifying, and we're consistently identifying, and we're consistently tracking who these youth are coming in and out of the county, and making sure that those youth don't fall through the cracks if they're coming into the county, say maybe in January, as opposed to the beginning of the academic year in September or August. And so there's some tools that can be used to track and to identify those youth. The three common ones that we have seen that are being used is the first is CalPads. And so CalPads is a list that is matching school enrollment data with child welfare data from CWS-CMS, a child welfare CDSS's database. And so here they're able to generate a list of the foster youth that's enrolled in their schools that's by county. And FYSCPs can then collaborate with child welfare and probation and make sure that they identify accuracy. I did want to note that that these systems aren't perfect, but this is a system that we have, and it has allowed for counties to have more pointed and more informed conversations of why is the data not matching, and what is it that we can do as a county, as a state, to have this data match better. Then you have the system Foster Focus. So this is if you are a county that is utilizing Foster Focus, there's actually a report, a unique report at the end that is within Foster Focus that is called the Higher Ed Checklist. And this checklist is specifically designed to support the FYSCPs to do FAFSA completion. And so there's a bunch of stuff in there from finished FAFSA to checking off on a student level data if they completed a CHAFE, if they did a GPA verification, which is related to the Cal Grant. And so a lot of really robust information in there to make sure that it informs counties, and it's informing anybody else who has access to Foster Focus within the county. Okay, so districts can also have access to this through their local system administration, and that's typically housed within the County Office of Education. So if you are sitting at a district or a school and you would like to know if your county is working with this, I would highly advise to contact your County Office of Education, contact your FYSCP to see if your district can have access to these systems so that you can also start tracking FAFSA completion within your school district. And then finally, JBAY, John Burton Advocates for Youth, had created a tracking tool that will track foster youth movement within the county and tracks their completion rates. And so this spreadsheet actually will allow for you to put in what date they started in the county, what date they left the county, did they complete a FAFSA, and if they're included into the overall numbers. And then it'll spit out a percentage based on who completed a FAFSA and who didn't. And so it's a really easy way of tracking from the beginning of tracking to the very end of the year to continually go to this list and add students who are coming into the county and who are leaving the county. Right. So next, there is making sure for a best practice that we are executing data sharing agreements. What we've learned through the FAFSA challenge is that there are a lot of pieces of data that aren't necessarily shared with or coordinated with. And again, I think it's all with best intentions, but a lot of times what happens is that services are duplicated or lists look different. The CalPADS list may look very different from what child welfare has. Child welfare's agencies may have a different list than probation. Probation may have a different understanding of what FAFSA completion is. And so there has to be a whole round of communication and understanding and a system created to have some data sharing agreements between all of these counterparts of school districts, FYSCPs, probation, and for child welfare agencies. And this also allows to have really informed conversations about gaps that are missing in the data. Maybe there's pieces and parts of the counties that are not being addressed. Maybe there's types of schools that are not being targeted. And so it really allows to have a really robust conversation about who is being targeted to complete a FAFSA, maybe who's not, and what supports are needed to make sure that all youth have access to complete a FAFSA. All right, and at this time, I'm actually going to put myself on mute and bring on Jason Haley, who is with the Tulare County Office of Education, and he's going to talk about what they do within their county.
All right, good morning. Yeah, as the slide shows, our county uses Foster Focus, which is essentially importing information from CalPADS and CWS CMS. So we'll do a weekly CalPADS upload, and then I will, using Foster Focus, I will pull a dynamic report with all of our 12th grade students, and essentially create a detailed Excel sheet as a result of that. I will then kind of run the students, compare them with web grants, and then with the Excel sheet allows for customization, such as entering their ILP social worker, completion of the Chafee grant, their high school counselor, if their GPA was uploaded and what their GPA was, I will add that to the Excel sheet as well. And I will also enter the web grant school code. It was like a new thing I did last year. Not sure why I did not do that before, but as far as all the information right there, because searching through web grants can be a little tedious and time consuming, just kind of looking for everything. But if you have all the information right there, then it's super helpful. Also, with Foster Focus, I assign myself as an ICM, which stands for Instructional Case Manager. So then on my home screen, when I log into Foster Focus, I can see updates, whether it's placement information, school change, behavior, attendance, social worker change, things like that. So it's good to have all that information. And as far as collaboration, it's pretty much huge. It's really the only way that we're able to accomplish as many FAFSA completions as we're able to do. So it's definitely coordinating with ILP. Our local ILP has been great. They have several workshops for FAFSAs throughout the year, and that's actually held at our local community college, where the financial aid foster youth liaison, the FYSI contact, runs these workshops. So you can feel confident that they're done accurately and the students are getting great information. Also coordinate with our local STRTPs. We have a large probation home in our county. They have an aftercare specialist who assists students with financial aid, where 2 years ago they were not doing that. And as far as the FAFSA challenge and reaching out to them and training the staff member up has definitely paid off, because now we have increased communication, asking questions, and following up and confirming that students are connected to their local community colleges, or if they're returning back home to their counties, connected to those schools. So, and then also, a lot of support from local school district staff, local school counselors. The FAFSA challenge kind of allowed our county, like an end to these schools and a reason to kind of, coordinate and communicate, as opposed to just kind of reacting to certain things that may come up or specific child welfare things. We can kind of be a little bit more proactive, reaching out to these schools at the beginning of the year, getting the information, and then it also kind of leads to those other relevant foster student questions, whether it's AB 167 or discussion on partial credits or proper discipline, and all these things. And then I'd say lastly, recognize FAFSA is definitely a conversation about the student's future. It's not just merely doing the FAFSA and knocking it out, but rather, a full conversation where if I'm meeting with students, and I'll typically meet with students from different counties, I don't just kind of start in with the FAFSA. It's more just, hey, you're close to graduating. What are your plans? Oftentimes I'll hear that they're interested in employment, and I kind of then try to segue that conversation into specific trade programs at our local community colleges or CTE programs, getting a certificate or an AA degree, and then talking about ways to pay for it, and then kind of then introducing the FAFSA and the Chafee grant and additional scholarships and Cal grants and everything like that, which then kind of gets the student a little bit more excited. I've had recent instances of helping students with their FAFSA where they were not hardly even attending school, and just kind of having that talk and that conversation motivates the student to complete their FAFSA, and then motivates them to actually finish out school and get those credits out of the way, so they can kind of move on to maybe that educational setting they're more interested in, applying for a certificate in a CTE program. So that's pretty much all I got. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Jason. I think that it's critical that you had spoke about all of the collaboration and the things that were, and the people that are needed to make sure that the youth feel supported and are able to have those really great conversations. And I'm glad that this has led to more students being able to see themselves going to college even after completing that FAFSA. So thank you again for your time today here on today's webinar.
Thank you.
All right, and so Jason had spoke a lot about the collaborations that were needed, and so I am actually going to go into a little bit more detail about some of the best practices that we saw of who should be the key stakeholders when leveraging resources through collaboration. And so again, this is making sure that who needs to be at the table and who do we need to cultivate better relationships and stronger relationships with to make sure that we're coordinating appropriately and not duplicating services. So the first one, of course, is going to be our school counselors. Okay, so we know that our school counselors, depending on the campus or the district, they may not necessarily be meeting with their students one-on-one. They have varying caseloads and various roles that are happening on our campuses, and they may not actually be aware of the students that are the foster youth that are within their schools. And so creating that communication, and again with that data sharing, letting the school counselors know these are the youth that are in your schools, they haven't finished a FAFSA or they have finished a FAFSA, or this is the information that you're going to need to support this youth to finish a FAFSA. And this is also important to note that some recent legislation, AB 2015, is requiring that they provide information to all 12th grade students on completing the FAFSA and how to submit the FAFSA. And so this is a good opportunity if you are creating literature and resources to comply with this new provision, to add in resources on how foster youth can complete the FAFSA, because there are variations and some differences on finishing a FAFSA with a general population of student who does have a family unit and a foster youth student, right? And then providing that individual assistance on both training those maybe your school counselors and encouraging school counselors to do more one-on-one support with foster youth. Okay, so next is, of course, our independent living program, or ILP. So they are able to provide, and they already do, regular one-on-one assistance to complete the FAFSA. They also are also organizing regularly with the local colleges, scheduling workshops with around FAFSA completion and college applications. And then due to their unique position within child welfare, they're able to access Social Security numbers, Chafee grant eligibility, and just making sure the students are feeling supported and have the access to information they need to finish that FAFSA. Okay, so a lot of times when we're working with youth, they may not know their Social Security number. Okay, so our ILP programs are able to go into their systems and provide that information for the students so that they don't have to come back to finish that FAFSA. Okay, so they can do it in one setting. And just as a reminder, that the Chafee grant is a grant that is available to youth who were in foster care on or after the 16th birthday, and they may qualify for monies of up to $5,000, right? So it's even more important that first step they have to finish a FAFSA to even get to that point of being awarded that extra $5,000, right? So again, we're seeing that if a FAFSA is not completed, they could be losing out on thousands of dollars to go to college. Okay, and we have our child welfare agencies, of course, and just making, excuse me. Recent legislation has also provided some more guidance and some more support for foster youth that are identifying that they do want to go to college. And so SB 12 is ensuring that there is a point person that is identified within their case plan after the age of 16 of who's going to help them with their financial aid applications and their college applications. So this again is another thing, another reason to collaborate, because if you are a county office that's coordinating with child welfare and someone has already been identified to complete the FAFSA, their county offices need to know that so that they can, again, not duplicate services, and to make sure that that person that's been identified actually feels supported and has access to resources to complete that FAFSA with them. Again, making sure that there's a data sharing agreement. With that data sharing, it will allow for better and more efficient follow-up with students, and they'll be able to, if their caseloads allow, to provide one-on-one support on FAFSA completion and the follow-up, and again, to provide Social Security numbers and Chafee grant eligibility information as well. Okay, so again, if we're coordinating with our child welfare partners and we're not duplicating services, we are making sure that there's a team effort, and so that we are helping to fill in the gaps of resources and support that we may need as county partners to make sure the student feels supported. And we have our local colleges and universities. They're extremely important to engage, as this is the place where the youth are going to end up once they are graduating from high school and they are going into the colleges. And so making sure that you as a county person or a school district or child welfare knows who are the local universities and who are the foster youth support programs or the FYSI liaison, those foster youth liaisons that are on campus. They are happy to coordinate and collaborate with the counties, and so they do want to come out and support. I know that, again, ILP is leveraging that support, and so county offices can also leverage that support as well. And again, they can also provide that one-on-one FAFSA assistance. I know that Jason had just mentioned that they do a county event, and I do know of other counties that are doing events where they're bringing students on campus and they're doing FAFSAs one-on-one with them, or they have these very large college and career events where they're making sure there's computers there for students to do college applications and FAFSA applications. So there is room, and there is definitely a need to make sure that our colleges and universities are in the conversation. And again, they are hosting workshops and college events, and they also can provide training. The college and financial aid process is not an easy one and done process. It's constantly changing, just as child welfare things are changing. And so, these colleges and universities are a critical place to go and get updated information on financial aid and college applications. Okay, and then finally we have CASAs, or court-appointed special advocates. CASAs are in a unique position in that they can dive deeper and provide deeper support on top of that one-on-one support for the youth. They can go in there and make sure that the youth is completing it accurately. They can make sure that they are in the conversation of follow-up that's needed, maybe there's documentation that's needed. Again, they can help to identify their social security number. And so utilizing CASAs in all the counties, if a youth has a CASA, could be huge. And then also just making sure the CASAs feel supported. If they need to have training, do we need to contact the local colleges to give them training on FAFSA completion? Or do we need to make sure that they are up to date on things that are changing within the child welfare world? And so just making sure that our CASAs are in the conversation, because they have the ability and they are working with the youth one-on-one, and they are their advocates. All right. Now I'm actually going to turn it over to Stacey. Stacey is over at the San Bernardino County Superintendent's Office, and she's going to talk a little bit more about how they're working with their school districts and counselors to make sure that FAFSA completion is happening within San Bernardino County.
Hi, good morning. So, okay, so my role is a foster youth specialist with San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools. We coordinate, so we're a coordinating program. So to get to help FASFA be completed with our foster youth, we decided to reach out and assist our school districts in helping them do workshops. So, so it also, sorry, okay, so let me start with my notes. Okay, so this began with, we decided we needed to create a flyer. So again, this flyer is not for the students. You guys can understand the sensitivity in that. The flyer is for administration and for those in that role in the schools to get us inside. So like your school counselors. So the flyer basically will state that, you know, assisting with a FAFSA workshop. So we're not hosting the workshops, we're assisting the counselors. I utilized my CWA. We're in my department, our CWA is part of our department, our homeless education and child welfare and attendance. So we have a monthly meeting and we take a seat on this monthly meeting. So I utilize that time to introduce the FAFSA workshop to all the other CWAs that are in the other districts. So this was my inside. So that helps me explain what I'm trying to do and to get in touch with the counselor. So that CWA will connect me, and it doesn't even have to be a CWA. It could be a principal. It could be anybody that you know in that role that can connect you to the school counselor. So then it will go to, I'll follow up with them with an email, you know, as far as like the flyer and discussing it more. I'll use that email to connect to the counselor. Sometimes I don't even have to email the counselor. They'll CC the counselor and bam, the connection's already made. So a lot of times the counselor will, they already have workshops that have already been implemented, but they see the significance in this. Again, we coordinate with homeless education, so we welcome our homeless and McKinney-Vento youth as well. Some of the schools will decide not to have them together, so we'll make time to do a workshop with, you know, with whichever population we're dealing with at the moment. Okay, so let me see, where am I at? So we have the flyer, we get in, we set a date. You can do the FAFSA workshop, you can assist them with this in like normally like an hour, but we recommend an hour and a half because this will also open the opportunity to discuss other opportunities for the youth, such as like the Chafee grant, getting them on the scholarships and so forth. Also, when we meet with the students, we have like a cheat sheet for them. So then that way they can put down their password that they do, the save key, the password that they use, anything that they're going to use that day. They can write this down, take a picture of it, email it to themselves. It also gives them the opportunity to talk to us about, you know, how are they going to acquire their dependency, their verification letter. And it always happens too. You're always going to have a youth that doesn't have their social security number. Well, then that's when you utilize your CFS. So normally before I go to a workshop, I'll call CFS and say, hey, you know, I'm headed to such and such school, be on standby. I might call you because I will always have to call them, and they're ready to help because, you know, once you have the youth ready to go do their FAFSA application, we don't want to stop them. Also, I will reach out to community colleges. So my focus is the high desert. So if I'm at a Victorville Hesperia school, I'll reach out, or Apple Valley, I'll reach out to Victor Valley College or Barstow College, Community College. Next step at Victor Valley College is really eager to assist with me at these workshops. So they come along too. And that's so awesome because they're able to give the youth a business card, you know, like a straight contact. So the youth has that connection. And I've found that to be very valuable. And they get hands-on as far as like exactly what that college can offer them, all the way from if it's career and technical or however that college is gonna help them out. I want to say, I think so that's how it happens. It all starts with a flyer and making those connections and networking, and most importantly too, when you do go to the schools, we don't have like name badges on. We're not announcing that we're foster youth coming to do a workshop. The counselors do. I'll talk to the counselors as far as like comparing a CalPADS report as far as who their foster youth are, or if it's McKinney-Vento and homeless youth, they have their own school systems and how they identify those kiddos. But when we do arrive, you know, we don't go to the office saying, you know, we're here for a FASFA foster youth workshop. You know, we just go in very discreetly. We have our workshop with the kids, and then we make ourselves accessible too. So if a student happens to be where they don't finish the FAFSA, they have their high school counselor, but they also have connection to us. We make ourselves very available for them. They can call us at any time. So it's just basically establishing that relationship and handing them off into letting them meet the community colleges and getting their FAFSAs and stuff done. And I want to say, I think I touched up on everything how we do it here. I think I'm good.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stacey. It sounds like you guys are doing a lot to make sure that you support the youth and the counselors that are in your schools.
Oh yeah, it's super cool. But I have the honor I get to introduce Jessica Petros from and she's joining us in from John Burton's Advocates for Youth.
Great, thank you so much, Stacey. Next slide up there. Great. So there's been a lot of talk about some best practices, and I want to share some more with you that we found as well going through the FAFSA challenge. So another best practice is to ensure that foster youth attending non-traditional school settings are also included in FAFSA completion efforts. At times during the course of the FAFSA challenge, we found that professionals from a variety of settings would sometimes express the belief that college wasn't a realistic pathway for students in certain types of educational settings. This included alternative schools, probation schools, and non-public schools. And at times, this belief extended in particular to students with disabilities. However, many students in non-traditional schools and students with disabilities can definitely go on to be very successful college students. Another common misconception is that foster youth who do not graduate with a high school diploma or obtain a GED are either ineligible to attend college or not eligible for any financial aid. In fact, though, youth are not required to have a high school diploma or GED in order to attend community college, and these students are also still eligible for some types of financial aid. Also to note, students with a GED actually qualify for all the same forms of financial aid as students with a diploma. So we definitely want to make sure to engage and support these students in our FAFSA completion efforts. Next slide. In California, our post-secondary systems actually offer a variety of pathways, including a bachelor's degree, associate's degree, as well as career and technical education, also known as CTE programs. Students enrolled in many CTE programs can qualify for financial aid as well. And it's really important that students pursuing a non-traditional route to post-secondary ed, such as CTE, still receive assistance with their FAFSA or California DREAM Act application. College campuses also offer a really wide range of support services that can help these students to be successful in college. For example, students with a verified disability can actually enroll in disabled student programs and services, often called DSPS, and students participating in DSPS can receive all different types of specialized services, such as additional counseling support, access to note takers, additional test taking time, assistive technology, and other accommodations that can help them through their courses. Students can also qualify to participate in educational support programs at the colleges. There's many that can be found there. Just some examples are the Extended Opportunities and Programs and Services, also known as EOP&S, or the Next Step program, which is for eligible foster youth that have been in care after the age of 16. And they offer a range of resources for students who need additional support to be successful. So there are many pathways for these students as well. Next slide. Additionally, it's really important that foster youth have access to the Cal Grant program by verifying that LEAs have submitted high school GPA verification. So LEA, that stands for Local Education Agency, and that's just another name for the districts. And why is it so important that they are getting access to the Cal Grant? The Cal Grant is actually the largest state-funded program, and it provides grant funds to low-income California residents. So let's break this down in terms of what it pays for. The Cal Grant can actually pay for the full cost of tuition for students attending a California State University or a University of California campus. And both university and community college students can actually receive up to about $1,600 per year for non-tuition costs, such as rent and textbooks. And this is new. As of the 2019-2020 academic year, parenting students across all systems became eligible for additional awards of up to $6,000 for non-tuition costs. So this is making the Cal Grant an even more essential resource for these students. And this is particularly important for our foster youth because 2/3 of women and about half of men with experience in the foster care system actually have at least one child by the age 24. So this new benefit really makes college possible for many parenting youth in the foster care system. So the Cal Grant can offer a lot of financial resources. However, though, in order for a student who's newly entering college to qualify, they have to demonstrate a minimum high school GPA of 2.0 or higher. Now, most high schools, they're required by law to electronically upload each student's GPA in October of the student's 12th grade year, and then again at the end of the academic school year into the system called Web Grants that Tia had referenced. And the Web Grant system then matches the student's uploaded GPA to a FAFSA or California Dream Act application to determine whether the student meets Cal Grant eligibility. Unfortunately, though, we found that many students, particularly those in the foster care system, are missing out on the Cal Grant because their verified GPA was not received by the deadline and then successfully matched to their financial aid application. Next slide. So why does this happen? There are actually a lot of challenges unique to foster youth specifically that prevent a successful GPA verification. Foster youth on average are significantly more mobile than students not in the foster care system. The studies have actually found that foster youth are 4 times more likely to change schools during the school year than other students. So what happens then is as a result of this, the high school that uploads the GPA data in October is often not the same high school that a student lists on their FAFSA several months later. And this can lead to a failure in the data matching process. And then when this match is not successful through the automated system, unless the student manually corrects it, the student is deemed ineligible for a Cal Grant, and it can cause them to lose out on thousands of dollars in potential financial aid. In some cases, though, even with a successful data match, just to note, students are ineligible for the Cal Grant due to not having a 2.0 GPA or higher. There are solutions, though. There's actually a number of different partners that can play a role to ensuring that foster youth GPAs are matched to their FAFSAs or California Dream Act applications. The County Office of Ed, the FYSCP staff, can definitely verify if there's been a successful GPA, and they can do this actually through the Web Grant system. So that way, if it is unsuccessful, the FYSCP can alert the appropriate school site personnel to address the issue. Districts also have access to the Web Grant system. That can include school counselors, administrators, AB 490 liaisons, and they can monitor as well whether the match has been successful and then provide manual corrections as needed in Web Grants or support the students to update their high school information in their FAFSA or California Dream Act application. Corrections and web grants can often be done electronically, but if necessary, they can submit the paper GPA verification form, which is available on the CSAC website, the California Student Aid Commission website. Next slide. Another best practice is to pay special attention to ensuring that foster youth attending our non-traditional school settings can be monitored for FAFSA completion and have access to the Cal Grant. So during the FAFSA challenge, we found that many counties struggled with obtaining data regarding students in non-traditional school settings, such as those at alternative ed settings, probation schools, charter schools, and non-public schools. In some cases, it was due to administrative hurdles. Some schools were just not participating in web grants at all, even though they were accredited. And at other times, it was just due to a simple error in the system with access. So FYSCPs should work with CSAC to troubleshoot barriers in order to gain access to all the accredited schools in their county. In other cases, student information was not available because the web grant system only allows accredited schools to upload data. And some non-traditional school settings, particularly some non-public schools, are unaccredited. So consequently, counties were only able to identify the students who attend these schools and determine if they had completed a FAFSA. They were unable to identify those students. So what's the solution? There are some solutions, so that's some good news. For students attending schools that are not in web grants, FAFSA completion must be verified manually. One option is for the student to provide a copy of their FAFSA confirmation report directly to the FYSCP or school district administrator that's monitoring completion. Another option for the student is that they can sign up for a free Web Grants for Students account. And this is online as well, and it will allow the students to track the FAFSA matching and the awarding process for state aid, such as the Cal Grant and the Chafee Grant. And then this information as well can then be provided to the FYSCP or the district. If the school is not uploading information into web grants, these students end up being largely disqualified from state financial aid unless the student proactively submits a paper GPA verification form. So it's really vital that all of the accredited schools, including the non-traditional settings, gain access to the web grant system and submit this GPA verification for all their 12th grade students, regardless of whether they're legally required to do so. Next slide. Another important best practice is to provide extensive technical assistance. So technical assistance is a broad term. It's used to describe the act of providing subject matter expertise and assistance, and this can be through the sharing of information, skills, training, or consultation, and it helps to build the capacity of partners to reach a shared goal. It's important to note that with the passage of AB 854 in 2015, the role of the FYSCPs actually shifted from one of direct service to one of coordination and technical assistance. Given this, FYSCPs are really ideally situated to provide technical assistance in relation to FAFSA completion efforts. So here are a few strategies that can help FYSCPs to be most effective in their provision of technical assistance. One option is to make sure that FYSCPs establish buy-in as a technical assistance provider. So FYSCPs don't actually have formal authority over partner organizations. They can't actually make the districts do anything, but that's okay. It's really not required to have that formal authority to promote change and effectively provide technical assistance. They can begin by establishing a shared vision, shared goals, so that they're aligning missions and building rapport with the districts and their community partners. One option is to reference existing expectations for the high school counselors, because this can help to frame the importance and relevance of financial aid completion efforts for foster youth. When co-developing the strategies for success, I would say conversations can really begin by utilizing a "how can I help" approach instead of "this is what you need to do." Technical assistance, it's not about directing partners what to do, but it's really about serving alongside partners to reach a shared goal. Next, they can provide targeted training to school districts and community partners. While many districts are familiar with the general financial aid processes, many are not familiar with the unique considerations and challenges that youth in the foster care system may face. So it's important that direct service practitioners, that they have training related to targeted strategies to address these unique considerations and all the various benefits that are available to foster youth as well. A lot of times foster youth, they miss out on all these resources and financial aid simply because they were just not made aware of the opportunities. So the FYSCPs, they can provide or coordinate targeted training to all different types of folks. This could include the foster youth liaisons, like the AB 490 liaisons, high school counselors, as well as community partners such as CASAs, resource parents, or independent living program staff, really making sure that all the stakeholders at the table are trained and equipped with the information that they need. These trainings can either be in person or even remotely via webinar. It really just depends on the needs of your stakeholders. And another idea too is to leverage assistance from other subject matter experts. This could include the campus-based foster youth support programs or the foster youth success initiative liaisons from the local colleges. In addition to training, the FYSCPs can provide toolkits and quick reference materials. And I'm actually going to reference in a later slide some of the links to these toolkits that you can use. And the FYSCPs can also distribute promotional materials. That could include FAFSA awareness posters that are specifically targeted to foster youth, as well as FAFSA completion stickers that can be distributed to districts and partners. And these types of materials just really help to encourage and motivate youth. And I'll show you as well that these materials are available for download on our JBAY website as well. And lastly, FYSCPs can use outcome data to drive technical assistance. But I want to spend a little bit more time talking about how that data can be used. Let's go to the next slide. So data can be a really powerful tool that the FYSCPs can use to initiate a conversation, to inform their technical assistance, and inform their planning. One way that it can be used is that it can help them to pinpoint which districts really need additional support and use that data as part of a conversation with the districts to see what things are working well and what areas they can maybe focus on more to improve their outcomes. The data can also be provided to child welfare and probation agencies. As Tia was mentioning too, this type of data sharing is really effective. And then that way the social workers or the probation officers, they can actually include information about resources for FAFSA completion during their monthly home visits and reinforce the importance of this with their youth and identify students that need additional assistance. And tracking rates over time, big picture, can help FYSCPs to gauge whether their efforts within the county are effective, and as well continue to see which districts might need additional technical assistance or resources. And another idea is that FYSCPs can consider looking at not only FAFSA data, but there are other relevant data points out there as well, such as college enrollment data. This college enrollment data just became available pretty recently for foster youth, and it's now aggregated by the county, the district, and the school, and it's available through DataQuest. And DataQuest is this online public data dashboard created by the California Department of Education. And we have the link on there as well. So these data points can be used, whether on a school level, district, or county level, to really help identify strategies and inform how to best target resources to specific districts and schools. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we have many resources and toolkits that can be found on the JBAY website that FYSCPs and other adult supporters can utilize. One is we have a webinar training. It actually provides step-by-step instructions on how to fill out the FAFSA when working with foster youth. It's about an hour and a half, so you can definitely check that out. We also have different training curriculum on our website. It includes, for example, a PowerPoint deck that can be downloaded and modified as necessary, and that can be used to provide in-person training to a range of stakeholders. We also have training for child welfare and probation departments, and these can be used to train caregivers with our new Turning Dreams into Degrees curriculum. So that can also be found on that link. And lastly, we have a really wide range of additional FAFSA tools and resources. This includes the promotional materials I mentioned, such as the FAFSA posters and the stickers. And we also have, this is brand new, we just created a high school counselor foster youth FAFSA toolkit. And this was actually designed in partnership with the LA County Office of Education, designed specifically for TA for high school counselors. And also on that link, we have our financial aid guide for California Foster Youth. And we also have a companion visual guide, and it includes screenshots actually of every question on the FAFSA, along with detailed instructions on how to fill it out. So these are all great materials that you can use to share with youth as well as with adult supporters. Next slide. Another best practice is providing high-touch assistance to foster youth with the financial aid process. So for those of you that are working directly with students, these are some strategies that can be used to really successfully support them. One, whenever possible, connect foster youth to individualized one-on-one support. Given the unique needs that foster youth have and their specific considerations that they need to be aware of when applying, this high-touch individualized assistance can be much more effective than completing the FAFSA in a group setting, like in a workshop. Foster youth students frequently don't really receive this adequate support when they're connected to these large-scale college events or financial aid workshops. They don't really cater to their unique needs. I think as well, applying for financial aid for anyone can feel really overwhelming and intimidating, and individualized support can also assist students in maintaining their motivation to complete and persist through this very arduous process to make sure that they don't give up. Additionally, I think some students just may not feel comfortable asking questions or self-identifying as a foster youth if they're in a group setting with their non-foster youth peers. So that's another thing to keep in mind. The individualized assistance helps to protect their confidentiality and really creates a safe and supportive environment for them to complete the process. Also, whenever possible, use peer ambassadors to support the financial aid efforts. A lot of times, students are more receptive to peers than professionals, and you can train youth with experience in the foster care system on how to complete the FAFSA, and this can create opportunities to provide support beyond that, what's available from professionals. Now, if you do need to do a group event like a workshop, just be aware that there could be some challenges. We know that providing individualized assistance isn't always possible when there's limited resources. FYSCPs have found that workshops provided outside of school hours, they often require intensive outreach and tend to have lower turnout because there's a lot of challenges with transportation and scheduling conflicts. But if you do decide to go the route of a workshop, we do have some recommendations of how you can do that successfully. And we'll show that to you on the next slide. So workshops are most effective when sponsors engage in multiple outreach strategies and offer intensive follow-up, transportation, that's really key, making sure that students have a way to get there. Snacks, everyone loves to eat, so that always helps with attendance, and that there's student-friendly hours. So ideally, you'd want to do a workshop during school hours, but if not during school hours, immediately after school gets out, so you don't have to worry about the logistics of transportation and coordination. And of course, that you have adequate computer and internet access there too. A lot of counties have found success with workshops when they're also embedded into other larger scale college events or tours that are actually targeted to youth in the foster care system. Again, transportation is really key. Some ideas that we've seen partners do is that a FAFSA workshop could be hosted, for example, at a centralized school location during school hours, and then other students from neighboring schools are then transported to the location of the FAFSA workshops, and this could be part of a planned field trip, or it could also be part of a field trip or an event at a local college. And if it's part of a field trip, these events can be paired with just general college tours or other college matriculation activities. And community partners can be leveraged too. We talked about how important that coordination and collaboration is. So community partners such as the Independent Living Program, ILP, or a local community college foster youth campus support program, they can be leveraged to provide this assistance directly to students at these events or directly on a high school campus. Next slide. I also want to say too that before I forget as well, that when you're connecting foster youth to financial aid assistance workshops, it's really important that they're prepared in advance and know what to bring to successfully fill out their FAFSA. So particularly one area that we see a lot of barriers with is making sure that they have their social security number, and they need to get this not from their school, not from their district, but from their student social worker, their probation officer, or their independent living program. And FYSCPs can actually partner with their local ILP to ensure that they have access to their social security number during a workshop. For example, in LA County, the ILP transitional coordinator workers would actually be on site at an event with their laptop, and they would look up the social security numbers for the students who often don't have that information memorized, and they would also review Chafee grant eligibility. So there's actually other items that students need as well to be successful in filling out their FAFSA. We have checklists with this information. You can find it both in the financial aid guide for California Foster Youth, as well as the publication that we referenced today. And also making sure to educate the students that filling out the financial aid application is really just the first step. So the financial aid guide for foster youth provides detailed steps on what to do after the FAFSA and how to successfully maintain the financial aid once it's awarded to the student. But not only are there multiple follow-up steps after the FAFSA, filling out the financial aid application is actually a multi-part process. So we like to think about it as a four-part process, and in order for students to receive the maximum financial aid, it's really important that they receive assistance to complete all of these steps. So the first step is, of course, have them fill out the FAFSA or the California DREAM Act application if they're undocumented. And the next step, and we ideally recommend that they do this at the same time as they're doing the FAFSA, is that they complete their Chafee grant application. This can allow the students to receive up to $5,000 annually for eligible foster youth, so a lot of money. Next, we want them to create a Web Grants for Students account. As I mentioned before, it's really important to track and manage the status of their Chafee grant and their Cal grant. And this is where they can also indicate their school of enrollment, update contact information. And lastly, as we talked about before, this is where they can verify that the GPA verification was received within Web Grants. The priority deadline for students attending a four-year university is March 2nd to make sure that they submit that. But for foster youth attending community college, they actually have until September 2nd to complete this process. I also want to note, and I think some of our partners highlighted this as well from the other counties, that you can really utilize the FAFSA as an opportunity to have a conversation about the student's future. You know, applying for financial aid, it's more than just filling out an application. It can be used as an opportunity to inspire the students or provide hope and help them really focus on their career goals. A lot of times, students who are in the foster care system, they're also first-generation college students, so they may not have college-educated mentors, and attending college may not be a pathway that they've even ever explored or thought was possible. And then for some students, they may think they can't afford to go to college, or they're not college material due to maybe some of the trauma and abuse that they've experienced. So I think applying for financial aid can really create this opportunity to discuss their future as well as their potential. Next slide. So there are steps that both FYSCPs as well as school districts and child welfare agencies can take to institutionalize the FAFSA challenge efforts. You know, the FAFSA challenge, it won't be around forever, so it is crucial that these efforts are institutionalized within the FYSCPs so that this work continues, so that as their staffing changes or priorities shift, this work still persists. Now, in the short term, you know, having individual champions for this effort is enormously helpful. But over the long term, we really need buy-in from administrators and policymaking bodies. That's really key, along with documented policies that really outline what the expectations are. So here are a few ways that FYSCPs specifically can do this. One idea is messaging from institutional leaders. So this could include formal letters of support from institutional leaders, For example, a county office of ed superintendent, they can help to promote the significance of FAFSA completion and really help to set the tone about the urgency and the importance of this issue for foster youth. The messaging from a county office of ed superintendent to school district superintendents can help the counselors and the staff, those directly on the ground, feel like they're supported by their administration in these efforts as well. Another idea is boards of education. So FYSCPs could present at their board of education as one strategy. And another idea is to think about how to codify these efforts to achieve long-term institutional change. So as I mentioned, priorities within FYSCP, they can fluctuate over time due to a lot of different factors. And so if COEs, County Office of Ed, if they can codify their existing efforts permanently within their institutions, this will really help to ensure long-term implementation of these financial aid application assistance efforts for foster youth. And this can happen a few different ways. You can update your internal policies and procedures to embed protocols related to these efforts, or you could update job descriptions to ensure that the work continues across any internal staffing changes. And lastly, highlight successes. So FYSCPs, can and should elevate your accomplishments. You can present, of course, to your Board of Education about your success, but also internal newsletters, media attention, or presenting about achievements at stakeholder meetings. And we actually have some examples of media coverage, and they can also be found on our JBAY website as well. Next slide. So those were some examples of how to institutionalize these efforts within the FYSCPs, but we also want to do this within the school districts and child welfare departments. So why is that? Our local districts, they may have systems in place to support FAFSA completion, but they may not have foster youth specifically on their radar and may not understand the nuances of supporting this population. On the flip side, child welfare agencies are focused on the foster youth population, but they may not have an awareness of the importance of the financial aid process and how important it is to have access to financial aid for the youth's long-term success. So given this, it's really important for both districts and child welfare agencies to really institutionalize this work. So here are some ways that they can do this. One is they can utilize their policy-making bodies. So that could be their local boards of education for the districts, or county board of supervisors can also be leveraged. The county board of supervisors can actually, through board motions, direct departments and resources and codify existing efforts related to post-secondary educational support. For example, a motion issued by a county board of supervisor can actually formally direct county departments like child welfare and probation to collaborate with other partners such as your county office of ed, or to distribute materials, to align strategies, or promote general awareness about the FAFSA completion effort. Another idea is to align with any existing school district priorities to gain buy-in. So one idea for county office of ed folks or school districts is that they can actually leverage their existing local control and accountability plans. Those are also commonly referred to as LCAPs. The completion of LCAPs is actually required by all local education agencies, and it's used to set goals, plan actions, and leverage resources to improve student outcomes. So providing FAFSA completion assistance is a very concrete activity that districts can include in their plan to improve the educational outcomes for the students that are involved in the foster care system. The districts are also required to identify in their LCAP the specific strategies that they're going to be using to support the educational success for 3 identified populations, one of which is foster youth. So FAFSA assistance, it can be viewed as a means to help them reach their own goals within their LCAP. Another area that you might want to leverage to help gain buy-in is there was a new bill that passed. It's actually AB 2015, and it requires school districts beginning in the 2020-2021 academic year, so this coming year, to ensure that each of its students receives info about how to properly complete and submit the FAFSA. So that can be another lever that districts can use to get their buy-in about why this is important. Another idea is to leverage existing regional meetings to set FAFSA completion as a priority. I think a lot of times people have limited resources or under-resourced, so you may not always be able to establish a new meeting or a new work group. But when it's possible, just leverage existing collaborative meetings and use these to talk about financial aid and other strategies related to college matriculation. You can also develop support among key leaders. So this can be really accomplished through continual and persistent engagement with key leaders across the LEAs, the child welfare agencies, and the probation agencies. I think school superintendents and directors of child welfare and probation departments can also support these efforts. So they can do this by just simply sending supportive messages to their staff to underscore how important this work is. And as Tia had mentioned earlier, you can really utilize the requirements that were enacted through SB 12 as a way to gain buy-in among child welfare and probation agencies. So as Tia mentioned, SB 12 that was recently enacted, it requires social workers and probation officers to identify in the case plan all the foster youth that are 16 or older that want help and want to go to college, to help them with college applications and financial aid applications. So this requirement can really set the stage for conversations with your child welfare agencies about their role and how they can support FAFSA completion. And lastly, just like with our FYSCPs, think about how to codify efforts to achieve this long-term institutional change. So similar to the COEs, priorities within districts and partnering departments can also vary at time. And so codification of these practices within formal policy guidance or policy manuals and job descriptions is really essential to ensure the longevity of this work. Next slide. So we've shared a lot about the best practices, and we've been doing the FAFSA challenge for the past 3 years. And given our work with the FAFSA challenge, we actually do have a few recommendations that we feel can continue to improve the process. And one of them is to put structures within web grants that can help to streamline accessing foster youth data, specifically for FYSCPs. So web grants, it's been really instrumental to the efforts and the success of the FAFSA challenge and being able to track FAFSA completion for our 12th grade foster youth. But the system is also old and it has been cumbersome at times. Currently, actually, CSAC, California Student Aid Commission, is in a process to modernize their system. So now is actually a really ideal time to incorporate functionality that will better support these efforts. So here we have just a few recommendations that we at JBAY feel will really help to improve the web grant system. Essentially allowing counties to get, from a pilot that we did, for allowing them to get custom reports for their foster youth around financial aid completion, including data around GPA and Chafee grant data. This will really help them to have improved data systems. We also want the FYSCPs to have the ability to search for individual students in the system by their statewide student identifier rather than only by school. So given all those high rates of mobility that we talked about among foster youth, having this search capacity would make it substantially easier to track information for these students. And as mentioned previously, we really want CSAC to work with non-traditional schools to ensure that the GPA uploads are taking place. And this is particularly crucial for foster youth since they're overrepresented at these types of institutions. Next slide. In addition to that, JBAY is actually sponsoring 2 bills this year that we think will help to improve FAFSA completion and also improve college outcomes for foster youth. And just to note, participation on this webinar as a panelist does not imply support, but we are actually seeking support letters for these bills. So the first bill is SB 860 by Senator Beal. And, we've essentially seen so much success with the FAFSA challenge. And we want to make sure that this work continues and that it's institutionalized. And so this bill essentially just codifies the existing efforts that are already taking place. And it would really clarify in statute the role of FYSCPs to continue to ensure that they're playing that role of coordinating efforts to support FAFSA completion among foster youth. It doesn't mean that the FYSCPs would provide direct assistance, but they would continue to play a role within that coordination component. And also, the FYSCPs are currently submitting data to CDE on FAFSA completion rates for foster youth. And again, it would just codify that, making it in statute that data sharing would continue and that FAFSA completion rates would continue to be a reporting requirement by the FYSCPs to CDE. And our other bill is SB 958, and this is designed to improve college outcomes for foster youth. Currently, the Next Step program is for youth who are in the foster care system. The eligibility is that those had been in care at least one day after the age of 16. And this bill would expand access to the Next Step program by expanding the eligibility requirement to those youth who exited foster care on or after the age of 13. We've seen that there's still a lot of need for those students as well. And there would be some other changes to the program rules, so it would allow the program to better meet the needs of students. So if you're interested in supporting these bills, our link is there on our website. We would really appreciate a letter of support. Your support really makes a difference in the success of these bills getting passed. So with all that being said, I'd like to introduce our next county spotlight. We have LaShawna Jenkins with the LA County Office of Education. And as we've talked about all these different best practices, LaShawna is really going to talk about the great success that LA County has achieved and how and what they did to earn the award of Most Improved last year in the FAFSA Challenge. We'll turn it over to LaShawna, our Director of the Foster Youth Services Coordinating Program at the LA County Office of Education. And LaShawna, just make sure to unmute yourself so we can hear you.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Take it away.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Jessica, for the introduction. And I should say that we could not have done this work alone. We've received much support from JBAY, so thank you so much for your support. So Los Angeles County spans 4,083 square miles, which is larger than the state of Delaware and Rhode Island combined. With a population of more than 10 million people, Los Angeles County contains 80 school districts, 1,938 schools, 362 charters with an enrollment of 1.5 million students. And of that population, 30,121 school-age youth in foster care. So Foster Youth Services Coordinating Program, our goal is to build capacity and increase multi-sector collaboration amongst child welfare, probation, education, and community agencies in order to improve educational outcomes for our children in foster care. We have 10 educational counselors placed at offices across the county in partnership with the Department of Children and Family Services, the Department of Probation, and also the Dependency Court. We also have 5 program specialists who are assigned to cohorts of school districts to establish regional learning networks designed to address challenges and implement solutions to better meet the needs of students in foster care. So as previously mentioned, LA County has approximately 30,000 school-age youth in foster care, and it should be noted that the Department of Children and Family Services is the largest child welfare agency in the nation. During year 1 of the FAFSA Challenge, we had a 33% completion of seniors in foster care completing the FAFSA. So after much effort and coordination, LA County managed to support 51% of our 709 seniors in completing the FAFSA. This actually exceeded the general population rate of 58%. And as a result of that, the 28-point increase, LA County was awarded the statewide award for Most Improved. Next slide. So how did we do it? Again, we didn't do this work alone. There were many partners tied into this. And so with the institutionalized efforts, the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors passed a board motion to direct LA County Department of Probation and the Department of Children and Family Services to get involved in the FAFSA Challenge by collaborating with the Los Angeles County Office of Education Foster Youth Services Coordinating Program to increase the number of students completing the FAFSA. They also declared October Foster Youth College Awareness Month to promote the importance of post-secondary educational attainment for foster youth, and also requiring them to send out relevant college information. As a result of the board motion, leadership across LACO, the Department of Children and Family Services, and the Department of Probation coordinating efforts to increase financial aid application completion. Staff began to communicate regularly to discuss data and also align strategies across the county. These efforts were reinforced by our leaders across departments communicating the importance of the FAFSA. For instance, our LACO Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Deborah Eduardo, she sent a unified message to all 80 school district superintendents requesting their participation in the FAFSA challenge. And then also the director of DCFS, Bobby Cagle, also sent a message out to county staff countywide. Now, with regards to data sharing, through the California Student Aid Commission web grant system that Jessica previously referred to, we're able to access FAFSA data for individual foster youth as well as probation students. So we were then able to have our data team create individual reports for each high school and share that with them so that they know which students needed to complete the FAFSA. And then when there were errors, we were able to let them know that there was an error, and so the student needed to go back and receive support in correcting the error so that they can receive their funding. Also, on a monthly basis, we shared reports with the Department of Children and Family Services and the Department of Probation so that they could share that information with probation officers and social workers so that they would know which students needed to complete that FAFSA and where they were with regards to their FAFSA completion. So this approach allows school counselors, social workers, probation officers to strategically target students for individual assistance in completing their applications, or again, addressing any errors that would prevent them from being awarded financial aid. Now, with regards to leveraging school districts, because LA County is so large, unique strategies were developed by different school districts based on their size, location, and availability of resources. For instance, LA Unified School District, not only are they the largest school district in LA County, but they are the largest school district in the state of California. So given the size of their foster youth population, they have about 7,400 students in foster care. Their counselors were provided with in-depth training on how to support students in foster care in completing the FAFSA. And so then they moved forward to work with students individually to ensure that they completed the FAFSA. And as a result of these efforts, LAUSD had a completion rate of 73% of their children in foster care completing the FAFSA. And so they went from, well, they had a total of 123 of their 169 high school seniors complete the FAFSA. And then finally, with regards to workshops, LACO has hosted several workshops specific to FAFSA completion across the county. And DCFS has also coordinated with community partners and districts to provide FAFSA assistance, as well as information about the benefits of the independent living program services. One thing that we learned is that in providing workshops where we're just focusing on FAFSA, we don't always have the highest numbers. And so we've leveraged other events that are going on. So for instance, the Department of Probation, they have their annual college summit. And so with that piece, we were able to offer financial aid workshops, and a total of 55 students received support with the FAFSA. And then also with the Department of Children and Family Services, they host their annual celebration event for high school students graduating and going on to college. A total of 163 students received support at that time. So those are just some of the events and best practices that we implemented to support our students. Thank you. Jessica?
Yes.
Turning it back over to you.
All right, and I just wanted to thank you, Lashana. This is Tia again from John Burton Advocates for Youth, for being on the call and all of the amazing work that LA County is doing. I know that that is a huge lift, and you guys are doing amazing work. So at this time, I am going to actually open it up for questions. We have a few minutes for questions. And so if you have any questions, you can go ahead and click on questions in your control panel, type in your question, and then click send. So I will give a couple seconds, couple minutes. All right, I actually have a question for Jessica. You had mentioned earlier that there was a letter that was created from the superintendents in LA County. And is there any way that other counties can get their hands on what that letter looked like, or a template? I feel like that would be really very helpful for other counties.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So the Los Angeles County Office of Education, actually their superintendent, as was mentioned, sent a letter to all of their superintendents for all of their districts about the FAFSA challenge, and it really helped to promote awareness about the FAFSA challenge and encourage these efforts at their districts. And so LACO has actually generously offered to share this with other counties, and so we have this as an example template that other counties can utilize as well, and it's on our JBAY website under the FAFSA tools link.
Great. Thank you so much for that. This next question is actually going to be for Lashana. I know that within LA County, there is some data sharing that is going on between DCFS and probation. Can you talk a little bit more in detail about what that data sharing looks like and maybe some of the things that you have discovered since doing that data sharing?
So with the data sharing, as I mentioned, we're pulling the report from web grants, and we are providing probation with a list of students who are on probation and their status. So then probation officers are aware that the student should receive support in completing the FAFSA application, and they could reach out to the school districts to talk to the counselors to ensure that they're providing them with the support, and the same with the Department of Children and Family Services. And just as there's legislation where social workers are to identify someone who can help a student with completing the FAFSA, so they would have that information and they could follow up with those individuals that they identify to ensure that the students are receiving the support as outlined in the policy. And then also, as mentioned, we provide the list to the school districts, and so again, they have that information. All school districts, I mean, they do have access to web grants, but some school districts only have one person who has access to that. And because we have a team here who is able to pull the data, we're able to send it out to the districts on a monthly basis. If they find errors in the data, they can call us and we can help reconcile and do research and reconcile the errors, and so that they can know exactly what the student needs to do in order to successfully complete their application.
Great, thank you so much. This next question is actually for Jessica. You had mentioned that there is a new high school counselor toolkit that that's available. Can you talk a little bit about what is in that toolkit? I think some people are a little confused on what's in it.
Sure. So the reason we did this toolkit is we found often that high school counselors might be familiar generally with college matriculation and FAFSA efforts, but they may not be familiar with the unique considerations of foster youth. And so we created this toolkit to really help educate high school counselors about the youth in the foster care system, also the benefits that they can access as it relates to FAFSA. And so what we have on there is one is like an introductory overview sheet that provides information to them about what it means to be a youth in the foster care system, what are some of the challenges and barriers that they may face, highlighting that they might need extra support, and how important it is for that high school counselor to think about and target and support their foster youth students. And then we also have a glossary of terms for child welfare terms. Since there's so many acronyms in child welfare, it's really to help the counselors understand that new language and what all the terms and things mean if they are working with youth in foster care. And then also on there, we have a general FAQ that's targeted specifically for high school counselors around questions that they might have that we've heard from districts and from our FYSCPs that commonly come up from the high school counselors. And then lastly, there's a fact sheet, sort of like not really a fact sheet, but a tip sheet specifically for high school counselors. And it has all the things they need to know as it relates to the FAFSA and foster youth, such as applying for the JBAY grant or understanding how foster youth get independent status on the FAFSA, to really help them as a quick reference guide if they're working with students that are in the foster care system. So it's brand new. We're releasing it today, and it's on our website. So we definitely want you all to check that out. And it can be used by the counties as part of their technical assistance and training that they're doing with the high school counselors And our goal is really that it's used as part of a conversation or a training that's provided to the high school counselors as well.
Great, thank you so much. And at this point, we are actually at time. We're at 11:30. If there is a question that was not addressed, that you still have questions about, and you can reach out to myself. I can be reached at tia@jbay.org, or you can also reach out to Jessica Petros, who is could be reached at jessica@jbay.org. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we are very excited that we have been leading these efforts and helping the FYSCPs to do some really great work across the state, and I'm excited to see the continued increase of financial aid access throughout the state for our foster youth. Have a great day.